Joe Flacco is the Cleveland Browns' current quarterback. We're going to go through where he is thus far, where we think he can go, and a very, very important part of December, January football in the NFL, how we can marry back the Cleveland Browns running game to their offense. Jake Burns from the OBR is in. Your latest Locked On Browns starts now.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, LGB, on ELOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to the Locked On Podcast Network. Your host, Jeff Lloyd. I appreciate all of you who make Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. The everyday crowd. If you ain't in yet, then get on the bus, cuz, and subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. And the show is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We're joined today by the OBR's Jake Burns. Obviously, Jake Burns has been a part of this show as long as I have been hosting the show, and obviously Jake and I breaking into the Browns business roughly at the same time. Been a nice path for both of us. Things change. We grow. My kids were kids. Now they're teenagers. Jake's a family man now. But we are going to talk about Mr. Joe Flacco today. And Jake, just through two games, and the thing that is just absolutely insane about this is talking about a team sitting where the Browns are now within the standings and a fourth quarterback playing for the team. Normally, that's getting coaches fired, maybe general managers fired. But the Browns, this is a whole, and it probably would be the Browns that would be the team that this would go on for. To be something that's just so abnormally, within what this season has been. So you always say and try to equate that to a franchise like the Browns.
Yeah, I think they're navigating things now. That we've seen some parts of the offense. So what I would say is that the offense has been clearly beat up, but the defense hasn't been, outside of the cornerback role that Denzel has occupied. And sometimes Greg and Denzel have missed a few games equally here. I think that they've been pretty healthy on defense. So, when you look at what their challenges are, you're talking about being down 4 tackles, right? You're down 4 total tackles they wanted to play. So they're really playing the 5th and 6th guys there. And then the quarterback, we know all the injuries, right? So, but what I've been positive about for them is that they have been able to navigate one side of the football without the other side being too impacted. Now, the defense has not had a great game every week, but we've been at least able to count on them for the most part, especially at home. Now, you lose some pieces that really matter here. Obviously, with Okoronkwo, we don't really know what that looks like. Might not be a season ender, but we at least know he's out this week and probably another. But losing Delpit is pretty impactful because he's a core part of how they function defensively, both in the box, in man coverage, and then when they do some stuff in their zone looks where they use him as a bit of a rover type at times. But the good part here is that they still have units on the defense that are healthy-ish, right? And obviously you feel like interested to me, Jeff, to see how they overcome some damage on that side of the ball where they've been dealing with it on offense. So offensively, they've just sort of been feeding off the defense. How do we just sort of do just enough to win enough of these games? And they've done just enough. So I'm very interested, Jeff, to see how they respond on both sides of the football to being a little bit shorthanded, because they haven't really had that, because losing Mo, losing Ogbo, losing Delpit, and then potentially it looks like Thornhill's not going to play either. So you're looking at really some important part of the core of that defense. So how they respond, man, we've seen them respond to the point that they're 8-5, and I think it defies the odds of what even most around the NFL think they could do. But I really think that you should be Browns fans should be proud of how they've done, and I'm just fascinated. They've been so good at home, how well they can step up to the challenge of losing some pieces here on that side of the football and see if they can both kind of uplift each other. But Joe's been great. I mean, Joe is 2 games in, and I know we're going to talk about him, but you have to feel somehow it's crazy, Jeff, to get to your 4th quarterback and maybe feel like your 4th quarterback is going to give you maybe the second best route here behind Watson. That's kind of crazy, but it's good for them that they got here, right?
It's been just a crazy evolution of a season, and and look, there's going to be some conversations, most likely that are going to go on here whenever 2023 wraps about where that position's going to go, and hey, for us, that'll make for a bunch of great content in the waning of late February and early March, of course. But with Joe, and one of the things you see right away, and look, what you would expect from a quarterback who's 6'6", 240 pounds. There are certain elements to the passing game that you would expect to get when you have a guy of this size. Obviously, the Browns had a vision of what their quarterback looked like, and you see with Deshaun Watson and obviously DTR and PJ Walker, similarities. Not all cookie cutter same guy, of course, but you get Joe in here. And for me, Jake, and look, we have talked this a lot, and I've always been a proponent of Coach Stefanski. There's always been one lacking element, in my opinion, within their passing game, and you're starting to see hopefully that change now, because the one of Joe's pluses is also been one of Coach Kevin Stefanski's negatives.
Yeah, so I mean, the way I would kind of frame it, if I'm looking at this, is Kevin is extremely comfortable with this approach of offensive football that is very similar to what he's grown through with Kubiak, right? With whoever's been, I mean, Keenum was there for a while with him, and then you get Cousins. It's a very specific type of quarterback that can thrive in West Coast offenses. So, to me, Jeff, what's fascinating is that it took so long. I wonder how long he was on their radar as Deshaun dealt with injuries, and Kevin's I would imagine Kevin's the voice that's pushing for that type of quarterback, because that's what it's a far move away from the stylistic nature of what the three guys around him have done, right? Who are throw first guys. I'm not saying that either of the three between Watson, DTR, and PJ are guys who like to run it first or anything like that, but they certainly have that athleticism, and they have to. I think they're best operating in offense from the shotgun and doing some various things that can take advantage of those attributes. Whereas Joe, coming from a different era in the NFL, I think we can all agree about that at 38 years old, was more comfortable with a lot of the elements that Kevin likes to put in his offense, right? So that turn your back, drop back, play action, run action stuff, the 3 and 5 step drops from the gun, sometimes even 7. He can handle those things in a way of comfort that those guys just not necessarily loving. And it gives the Browns a bunch of different ways to run the football, which I know we're going to talk about, but be able to tie their play action game in really cleanly, and also mix and vary the depths at which the quarterback drops. And when you're able to mix up quarterback drop depth, it messes with pass rush in terms of how edges attack the tackles, in terms of, do they want to be upfield guys or do they want to be inside move guys? Because if the quarterback is short dropping, you don't want to do some certain moves because you're just going to take yourself, and it's a 3-step under center drop. I'm going to let the tackle run upfield all day. Go ahead, buddy. I'm just going to run you around the arc. So they're mixing some of that stuff up, and having a quarterback who's comfortable doing that, operating in that fashion, allows them to get the football out consistently, Jeff. And then obviously it alleviates the burden that they're putting on James Hudson and Jerron Christian. So I think that it's weird, man. I don't really know how else to explain it other than somehow they went from Deshaun's injury situation through the year and are on their fourth quarterback, but the fourth quarterback makes the most sense as the second best option they've had at the position all year. So while we are calling the situation unique and that it's a fourth, I think if you were to rank those guys, Jeff, you and I would probably say it is Deshaun, Flacco, probably DTR, and then PJ Walker. And it's like they were using Walker in really important early season moments and stuff. It's just weird the order at which they've found these, because usually I think if we said the Browns are on their fourth quarterback right now, we'd be like, yeah, they're on PJ Walker. But that's not really the case. They have somehow, and this is the good thing about their situation, is that they have found an answer here. And that's credit to Kevin and Andrew and the guys who made that decision to bring him in. And it's working out. It's working out pretty well for everybody involved right now. And I don't think that there's going to be some giant downturn. I think Joe's going to have some moments of struggle because he's, again, learning on the fly here, getting used to things. And this is almost like his preseason, if we're being honest. But he's I think he's gonna pretty consistently be the guy that we've seen so far through 2 games. Because there's been 2 different types of games. The Rams sat in a lot of zone and didn't blitz him much and said, hey, we're going to drop zone a lot of these guys and see if you can throw through them. And then the Jags were hyper aggressive and they were blitzing him a ton and stuff. And he handled both of those pretty well. So I think that even though we're labeling Joe as the 4th quarterback, there should be some moderate optimism that he's actually the 2nd best guy they put on the field this year.
Yeah. And I think the thing that's also a big benefit to the Browns right now is, what do you do? I mean, you've got 2 games of tape. I mean, and if you're trying to find something, you really can't watch the PJ Walker games. You really can't watch the Deshaun games. You really can't watch the DTR games. So, the Browns basically can add more to what they've been doing for 2 games here now. And it obviously puts a defense this late in the season into a point where, hey, there's going to be some stuff we just don't see. It hasn't been on tape. So really, really interesting. We're going to switch it up here with a guy like Joe, obviously coming in here with his veteran leadership. We're starting to see some other guys, as far as the skill players make plays. We want to talk about that here. Jeff Lloyd joining Jake Burns, your latest Locked On Browns. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to have as many top-tier candidates as possible to interview. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, what makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy that, in fact, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. But LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. LinkedIn, though, is the process that is intuitive, quick, and easy. They even just lost a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Your latest Locked On Browns, your host, Jeff Lloyd. We appreciate all of you who make Locked On Browns your first listen. Get in the club by making sure you subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. And of course, the show is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. We've seen, obviously, a yeoman-like effort. Amari Cooper, it just seems each week an injury adds up, and yet Amari Cooper finds a way to get himself out there. And when you have a veteran like Amari with, obviously Joe Flacco, there's a lot of, hey, we may not be that familiar with each other, but I know I'm seeing what you're seeing. But the key here has been, David Njoku, obviously a monster week last week. We're starting to kind of get the return on the investment from Elijah Moore that this team has been hoping for. And there is a wild card here with all this, Jake, with Cedric Tillman, who's kind of got, abnormal size for the Browns wide receiver room. Certainly got some wiggle, certainly got some yard run after the catch ability. So how is this all going to benefit and marinate essentially as Joe gets more and more comfortable within the offense and we start to see some other skill players starting to step up?
Yeah, it seems like to me there's a definition of roles in a unique way now. I think they're using Amari as more of a move player. They've gotten comfortable with him being not just kind of pigeonholed into playing X. They'll put him at Z. They'll put him in the slot. They have done a good job. It took them a while. I don't know, man. I'm an idiot, and I wrote about Elijah Moore over the summer that, like, this guy's an outside wide receiver. You can put him to the field or boundary, and he's best at attacking vertical to sideline routes. He can run in breakers, and that's fine, but he is an outside guy. He's not a slot shake player. He's not comfortable running over the middle and the shallow portions all that often. He's not a guy that you're handing the football to him in jet motion. Like, they tried it, and I give him credit for trying to make – I should be careful saying give him credit. I was frustrated with him early in the year because they were trying to make him a player I didn't think he was, but I understood with Donovan and Amari why they were trying to do it that way. So it took him a while, but since the Seahawks game, he's been a 70% outside of line player instead of in the 40s and 30s the way it was earlier in the year, and he's not a motion guy the way he was early in the year too. So I talked about this kind of earlier this week on my pod at length about how they've gotten more out of him. So there seems to be a comfortability there. There seems to be a home there. They view Cedric Tillman ironically as more of a big slot, which is, I think, a great role for him. Now, if you know, like I know, Jeff, and you watched him on tape last year at Tennessee runs this wide double stack, like sideline based concept with their four wide receivers where they space the field as often as they can. So he was very while obviously Tennessee found success with Hendon Hooker and using that, won some big ball games, beat Alabama, it is not necessarily serving the receivers in a way that helps them smoothly transition into the NFL. They're an up-tempo offense who runs like 5 routes. They're either running hitch, curl, takeoff, or sometimes like they would occasionally run a post, but they wouldn't run a very diverse route tree. So the mental side of this is why Cedric Tillman hasn't been in the roster and active as much as we thought he would be earlier in the year. I think they got comfortable with that. Now, he's made some mistakes. He's been a part of some illegal formation penalties. He's done some things wrong. You could see there were times, especially in that Baltimore game, where Watson had to line him up a couple different times. But he seems to have started to figure some things out, and they view him and his physicality, his ability to do different things over the middle of the field. And like you mentioned, Jeff, he is able to handle both phases of this thing to the point where I think, he's certainly not contributing a ton right now, but he is doing things that don't show up in a box score. And when we've had glimpses of him getting opportunities to catch the football, he's been fine. If not above fine, in my opinion. He's made some nice yak plays too. So I like where he's going. It's early in the process for him, but I do think his ability to be inside, outside, and be a bigger body in the slot is more unique than what you could get from Donovan. And he's got more wiggle than Donovan. And I like Donovan a lot. And he's found a little role in Detroit. I think that'll continue for him. But I think the upside of Tillman is enticing. Amari's just such a good flexible player that he can do a bunch of different things from a bunch of different places. And then they found Elijah's groove, right, where he best fits. And then from that, you can let David operate in the tight slot. You can put him in line. You can do a bunch of funky things with him because he's a unique unicorn, and he's not caught the football as much as he has in recent years as consistently, but he is doing things after the catch that he has not done as exclusively. So I think they have figured out we should get him the football in shallow portions of the field. And like, hey, you want to put a safety or God forbid a corner on him, good luck getting him to the ground, because we're going to give him space to operate and they can't tackle him. And then if you put a linebacker on him, we're going to work some stuff over the middle and they can't run with him. So they've done a really good job with him. He's top 7 in yards. He's leading all tight ends in yards after catch. So if he caught the football a little more consistently, he'd probably be top 5 in production. But again, with David, he's a tight end that never leaves the field. He is always out there block. He's a 6th extension lineman at times, and he's definitely developed a better repertoire as a receiver. So I think that even though the tackles are beat up and they're on again the 4th quarterback and they lost Nick and we've been through it all, but like they're still healthy at their pass catching positions. And I actually think with Joe's ability to process, get it out quick, and he throws a very catchable tempoed throw, I think that there's in my opinion, Jeff, good reason for optimism to continue to see this offensive, the skill position guys doing just fine. And then David Bell provides a nice answer too, is a rotational guy, and he's run some nice routes, made some big catches at times this year, and happy to see him get into the end zone in a huge moment. I think that was a big relief for him. So I certainly think they could draft another wide receiver this year and they could go after that position and try to be aggressive. But I do think that as far as where are they as a group, I feel like they're in a better spot now than they have been all year. So I'm excited to see how they finish the Final Four.
Well, I mean, yeah, obviously a couple of things here. And, this has always been the line with David. And I think a lot of people outside of Cleveland don't get it is you cannot cover him with linebackers because they can't run with him. And he's just too big for any defensive back on the field. And for Cedric Tillman, there definitely should be an asterisk here, because how much can you ask from a rookie wide receiver who's had 4 starting quarterbacks in his rookie season? So that's obviously a very difficult road to navigate as far as your own growth. And if you go to Denver, obviously the quarterback he was most familiar with, he was probably on his pace for he was probably going to end up being a 100-yard day that day for Cedric Tillman if DTR had finished that game. But we are going to get to something, and this is a weird one to actually talk about. As much as it's weird to talk about the Cleveland Browns having Joe Flacco, it's very difficult to talk about the Cleveland Browns and a big issue with running the football. We're going to get to that. Jake Burns joining us here, your latest Locked On Browns. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. As the holidays come in, and look, it's always a great time, but look, it does bring up memories, and sometimes you're dealing with loss, and you look around the room and there's faces that just aren't with you anymore. It really shouldn't be about the presents. It should be about the experiences, getting together. We all have busy, hectic lives, a day to just relax, eat, drink, be merry with the ones that we love. Whether or not your family gives gifts during the holidays, you get to define how you give to yourself, and the holidays are a great time to do just that. So whether it's starting therapy, going easier on yourself during the tough moments, or treating yourself to a day of complete rest, remember to give yourself some love this holiday season. Being a parent, a husband, now even having a full workload of looking after my mother every day, I know sometimes I'm stretching myself too thin. But the thing is I can't go to the people I'm supposed to be the best there for, because maybe they don't truly understand it. So I've got to go to somebody that can understand and keep my best interest and the best ability to coach me through it. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's done entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. You can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. In the season of giving, give yourself what you need with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Jeff Lloyd, joined by the OBRs, Jake Burns. We're going to break it all down here. Joe Flacco, the effect on the offense, where this team is going to this point. But this has been an issue. And Jake, I know you've dealt with it. I know, Kevin, just run the ball. Kevin, just run the ball. Well, 2.7 point yards per carry. We all like Barack, but I don't need to see him out there 10 times a game. If it's not working, what's the old line? I'm saying? You're foolish. You're just pounding your head against a wall. I still think it can be improved. You do have to think, I would think, Jake, that because one of the things with run blocking is the whole band working together. And the Browns were really, really fortunate. Batonio, Teller, Wills, whatever you think about them. These guys were out there each and every week. Conklin is, but the problem is now that there's so many moving parts, there's only so much practice time that's available. So I do think that could be part of it. And I do think Jerome Ford at times gets caught between this weird spot of patience, because maybe the 7-yard is there, or I see 2 to 3. I'm just going to get it.
I haven't been all too keen on how they're running the ball. If people listen to me, I've been vocal about this for a long time, because I think a large part of driving the bandwagon for what makes Deshaun Watson really comfortable is rooted in a different approach to run game. And I feel like I've talked about it a lot, but it drives from being diverse from the inside out. And I feel like a lot of the Browns run game these days starts from the outside in. If you look around the NFL, the run that has been the most successful this year is simply duo, which is a very downhill gap scheme that is just reading the Mike linebacker. It's like running power backside guard pulls for the play side inside linebacker, but there is no puller. So you're reading that guard and you get double teams at the point of attack. The Browns live in an outside running world. When they're under center, they run outside zone as their most frequent usage. And then when they're in the gun, they run what's called pin pull, which is pulling either a center or guard or a solo side tackle for outside run, or if it's a pulling the center and backside guard, or sometimes front side. It depends on what the defensive front is and what their down block opportunities look like. But moral of the story is they're trying to see gap and pursue outside as often as they can. And teams start to sit on that. There's a very specific example last week where the running back was to Josh Allen, the defensive end, the very good edge player for the Jags, to his side. And he condensed inside of what was going to be a crack block, right? So a crack block is meant to seal him so you can get out around it. David Njoku was in a 2-point stance, and he's going to crack on Josh Allen so you can run around the outside. It's been a big problem for the Browns defense, ironically. That's a different discussion. But when the back moved to the other side of Flacco in the shotgun, Josh Allen expanded outside of David Njoku, because he knows that this is a very high tendency for the Browns to run a lateral run game to away from where the running back is currently sitting, and that creates some easy block angles, and they get out around. So he moved outside of Njoku, and Njoku couldn't seal him, and thus it's a blown up play at the line of scrimmage because it just congests everything. So what I'm getting at here, Jeff, long-windedly, is that they're very predictable in what they like to do right now. And I think teams are thriving on knowing the tendency rate at which they run certain things. I have continued to say they would benefit from more inside zone from the gun. They benefit from more duo from under center. They tie in a lot of their play action and run action to looks like that under center. So I'm a little interested in how they're going to sort of navigate that the rest of the way, because right now the run game efficiency for them is broken. I feel like teams have a really good feel for what they're trying to do running the ball. So I think I would hope that they could figure out some unique, different things, maybe some traps, maybe some what I call same side power. So instead of having the shotgun running back across the quarterback's face, have him stay on the same side to break tendency a little bit. There are some things that they can do here, I think, to break up the team's opposing teams' navigation of what they're trying to do. And I hope they do start to get creative and experimental. They're diverse in terms of usages, but they haven't found success the way they need to find success, right, in terms of the efficiency. So I think they're diverse because they're searching. They're trying to find some things that work here, and they haven't been able to do that. So I'm hoping to see some of that stuff switch up. When you're in the gun, make teams respect the in-between the guard, center guard, and make them have to defend that, especially the edge guys who think that they can play outside primarily instead of their inside interior worrying about that sort of stuff. So I am hoping they can tie that together. Ironically, the run stuff hasn't been effective, but it's no secret these days what data will tell you don't have to be a super effective run team to find success in play action. So they're still using it to manipulate the second levels effectively. That's how you saw David get a wide open touchdown early. The second Njoku touchdown was off of a run action play where both Jags linebackers were screaming toward the line of scrimmage, and he's an easy throw to him, right? So I like the element of how they're tying the run game into the pass game still, despite the lack of run game efficiency. But as we know, Jeff, they go up 21-7, and they still feel like they can't run it well enough, and they throw it, and they throw into a blitz, and they eat a sack fumble there. They need to be able to get up, whatever these scores are, play from out in front, and be able to sort of put their foot on the throat by being able to run for 3-4 yards at a time to put themselves into good third downs and be able to bleed that clock out, because we know they're not going to always be scoring a ton of points. Like situations where it's 21-7, you got to be living in 3rd and 3s or less. And if you have to punt it, you have to punt it, but they can't. That was the one thing that you were telling yourself watching that game when they go up 21-7 early third quarter. Just don't give the Jags an easy score. Like, just play field position. If you got to punt it, pin them deep, make them beat your defense. And I think that that's where I'm not asking them to stop throwing. I like aggressive throwing. I don't mind early down throwing, but I am curious about when teams get desperate and they start to send extra people and they try to confuse your protection. If you can't keep them honest running the ball, then that's going to be a problem. So the Bears present a unique test. Our old buddy Andrew Billings is over there playing really well for them. They have gotten better the last 5 weeks, 6 weeks. So they're going to present a nice challenge for him this weekend.
Well, and the thing, of course, going with the inside zone, going with the trap game, there's only so much you can expect from Christian and Hudson. You can have higher expectations for Teller, Batonio, and whether it's Posick or Harris. Obviously, all of these guys have been with the system the entire time, obviously with Callahan, with Coach Stefanski. He is Jake Burns, the OBR, does a fantastic job over there. Obviously, the whole team over there, we just always been a great working relationship. Mad respect for the guys and the work they do over there. If you're not, make sure you're following at Jake_Burns 18 content over there, deep and just very, very in depth is what you get from Jake over there. Myself, Jeff Lloyd, you guys all know it's been 7 seasons now with Locked On Browns. It's crazy to even say it. When I look back at how long this tenure has been, and hell, I'll be here another 7 minimum. I'll be here another 70. Good Lord willing, let me stay here. I appreciate y'all who make Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. The everyday crowd, you guys got to get in, man. Simplest things. Just hit subscribe, man. We're going to put out some different stuff there. Obviously, the demand here for Browns content is very high with the success this team is having in the revolving door. And of course, the show is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, LGB on the LOB. Let's go, Browns.